Welcome to part 2 of using layers to create panels in Inkscape. So here we have our document that we created last time, our VexStrips 4-panel template. So we have it all ready to go. We have all of our panels locked up. Remember, we created a title and panel borders layer for actually dropping our empty hollow panels, and then you can also leave room for a title and byline or whatever you want to put up there. You know, you could also, create a header for your comic that says, with a logo and a cool icon or whatever you want to do. You can also create as many panels in a layout as you want. Just make sure that when you create a panel, you create a layer for that panel, and that's going to be important as I show you how to use a tool called Clip Layer, which is really the key to this whole method of making panels. And it seems complicated at first, but it will become very clear. So what I've done, I created just a little composition. It's our friend Rex Vex, and you can find his art on openclipart.org. And so I have this document I just call Rex in Mirror. So it's Rex Vex brushing his teeth, looking at himself in the mirror. Now remember, you can always go to your you can always hit the number 5, and that'll fill the page with your document. It looks we have Rex's mouth off to the side still from whatever I was doing. And Rex has no legs, but that doesn't matter because the composition I want to put together, you won't see his legs. But I built as much of him out as I thought I might need to show. So what we will do is we will go back to our layers. Right now I show every layer locked because in Inkscape, if a layer is locked, you can't do anything to it. You can't accidentally paste anything into it. You can't accidentally move something if you don't want it to be moved, whatever. So right now we want to keep our panel borders locked in place, and we want to build panel 1. So we will unlock panel 1 and make sure you've highlighted the panel that you're working with, because I'll show you. So we're gonna go to Rex in the mirror. We're going to use our selection tool, and we're just going to lasso this entire composition. We're going to Control-C to copy it. And then, so we want to do panel 1, but say I'm highlighted on panel 2, and I do a Control-V, nothing happens because I'm selected on a locked panel. So it won't let me paste into that panel. So make sure that you're on panel 1 and that you are pasting into the panel you want to paste into. So one of the nice things then about putting your panel borders at the very top of your document is when you paste in, then you will see the panels below the panel layout. So you can position things where you want and kind of use those as like a camera viewfinder, and you can define and build out your panels however you want to. So what we want to do is we want to get Rex. We need Rex to fill the page, so we got to sort of adjust. And there we go. So we have Rex looking at himself in the mirror. And so my concept, whoops. See, there I selected him. So let's select everything, and we'll just Control-G to group that. That way it moves around easier and we don't have to worry about moving things where we don't want them. So we've got Rex getting ready in the morning for whatever reason. And the theory behind this was that I would just create the same panel for all 4. It's going to be the same image in all 4 panels. Obviously, if you were building, a comic with a narrative, you could either build in a lot of times I use what I call work documents. I'll just use an empty document. I'll pose my characters, and then I'll copy and paste everything into a layer, just so that I don't have to adjust it necessarily once I've got it in place. So for the sake of this comic, it's going to be the same across all 4 panels. So we lock panel 1, we unlock panel 2, we paste it. Oops, see? I had panel 1 selected, it didn't paste in. So now I have panel 2. Here, let's do this instead. Since we already know panel 1 is the right size and scaled properly, we'll go back and recopy the correct scaled version. We'll relock that. Select panel 2. paste and sort of set up the same composition more or less. Maybe move it a little bit to the side here. Okay. Unlock panel 3. Oh, but okay, now we can't see what we're doing. So we're in panel 3 and we can't see how to position things necessarily. So that's where these little eyeballs come into play. You can turn off the view of any layer by just simply closing the eye. So click the little eye icon and it will blank out the view of that until you want to look at it again. So we'll get Rex and we're probably something along those lines, and then we will do the same thing again for panel 4. And again, this is just for demonstration purposes. We're not trying to be especially funny or wise or anything else. We're just kind of showing off the capabilities of what we can do here in Inkscape. So now we have 4 panels. So let's go ahead and just throw in some text. Let's create a little text box. Oops. Make sure you're working again in the panel you're in. So we're going to create a box. We're going to find our fill and stroke window because we want to kick the stroke down on that pretty low. We'll just make that 2 and we'll make that 1 even. And we'll go to pixels. There we go. We'll make that 3. And then we will go to, so that's on the stroke style. So now in fill, we want to go to fill, and that's brown. We don't want that. Let's do a nice yellow fill. That's a standard kind of comic shorthand, right? So now I don't really like that stroke. It's too narrow. Go back to stroke style. We'll make that 4. And these kind of will do ordering in terms of like where the stroke resides on an object. So I kind of like the rounded corner. So I would usually do a round join, cap it with a round cap, and then a lot of times you can adjust the order of the stroke and the fill and all that to get kind of the look that you want. And you can just play with those until you get something you like. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to adjust the box down, and we're going to use our text tool, and we're just going to type Monday, and let's see if we have the good old VexStrips font creative block, which I believe I have installed here somewhere. I think I do. Creative block BB. So that's the old school kind of traditional, what people used to see in VexStrips font. So I will select both of those, the caption box and the text. I'm going to copy those. So you can always select, remember if you select using your arrow tool, you select and hold down shift, you can select multiple objects. So we're going to redock that off to the side. I'm going to lock panel 1. I'm going to go to panel 2. And we're going to paste that. We'll position it in the same corner. Go to our text tool, select that. We'll type Tuesday. Lock it. Go to panel 3, unlock it. Go to our text tool, highlight Monday, Tuesday. Whoop. So now our caption box is too small, so we can just reach that. Use the arrow tool, reach in and adjust that. Lock it. Go to panel 4, unlock it. Adjust it where you want it again. And we'll type in Thursday. And then we need to adjust the box again, so you can always go in and just kind of get it how you want it. Okay, and then we want to put one last caption on there. We'll give Rex a thought balloon. And so to do a thought balloon, you're going to want to fill that with white. So we'll just select a whole bunch of these circles for Rex's thought balloon. I don't know if we got, did we get that? Yeah, we got that one. And then I'll show you a pretty cool tool in the paths menu, and that's union. So what that will do is these are basically called Boolean operations. You can use a shape as sort of a die cut to cut things, or you can create shapes by unioning all of the paths into a single object. So there, now we have something that kind of resembles a thought balloon. We can scale that down so that it looks like it's going to fit. Do the old traditional descending size of the dots for the thought balloon. So I'll select all of the thought balloon elements, and then I'll group those together, and then we will go to our text tool, and we'll just type the days go, oops, we'll do all caps, the days go, oops, go by like broken records. Kind of a bleak thought. But that's what we're going to do for the sake of this strip, just because, I don't know. So we want to find creative block. That's our VexStrips font. And the text handling in Inkscape is probably one of its bigger weaknesses as far as I'm concerned. It's not super intuitive, and there's some difficulty in adjusting things like spacing between the letters and kerning and things like that, which some more powerful programs might have. So right now I have this spacing top to bottom. I basically have it at 0, and it's still not as tight as I want. Here you also have your justification. So we'll center justify the text in our caption here. I think we'll go ahead and just put that down like that, so we've got a little more space. I think we'll. So again, you can kind of adjust things to get them to look the way you want. What I think I'm going to do is, and this is kind of a trick I figured out, I'll actually scale well, I've had that work in the past. So again, text handling can be a little frustrating. I don't know if I can do negative numbers in there or not. I don't think I can. Nope, it'll only let you do zeros. So you may have to just kind of tweak and adjust and get things to where you want them. So we'll just kind of make that a little bit bigger. You can also always go in and grab hold with your point tool and make things fit a little better. Let's zoom in on that. Ugh, we got a lot of weird extra. Here, we'll delete. So you can go in and anytime you can basically just delete any superfluous points that you feel like you don't want. We'll kind of select those and just move them up a little bit. There we go. So it's not a perfect, whoops, that looks terrible. Let's see. Delete some of that out. There we go. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just for demonstration purposes, but you know. So again, as you build your templates out and you start kind of working with it, with Inkscape, you can figure out tricks and tips that work. And I usually, once I get a kind of a text block and a size that I think looks good, I'll usually just copy and paste that text block and then edit it, as opposed to creating a new fresh one every time. So let's go 5 to go to a full screen. Now that we have all of our layers created, we have a complete comic, right? No, we don't. This looks terrible. So how do we get it to look like a traditional comic with the white space and the gutters between panels and all that? So that's where a tool called Layer there's a series of tools called extensions, and they do all kinds of things. There's color adjustments, and you can add textures, and people write extensions that can be plugged into Inkscape all the time. And so when I was kind of developing my method here, I discovered one called Layer Clip, and it was the exact thing that I needed to create panels, because I was looking for a way to create a comic entirely within Inkscape without having to go to something like Photoshop or GIMP or anything else. I wanted to be able to create the entire comic within Inkscape, and I found this Layer Clip extension. So I will include links and instructions on how to find that and install it. It's super easy. It's just a zip file you extract. You drop that extracted folder or file into a system folder in Inkscape, and depending on whether you're on Mac, Linux, or Windows, there's various places, but it's in the Inkscape program folders. And then once you launch Inkscape, it looks for the extension and finds it. So what we want to do is use Layer Clip. So it's extensions, Layer Clip, and we're going to go to panel 1, and that's our first panel. We're going to go to our rectangle tool, and we're going to draw a rectangle over our panel. So we're in panel 1. We have our selection tool. We have that panel selected. You want to make sure it's within the confines of the panel that overlays it. And I'll usually actually go to the fill and stroke palette. Stroke paint. We want to just remove the stroke from that. So what we really want is just a standard rectangle that we know fits within the panel border that's up in that very, very top layer. So once we have that selected, you can go to Extensions, Layer Clip, and you want to do Clip Containing Layer. So it's going to clip everything outside of that layer, and there are different ways to do that. There's layer above, layer below. I've found and had the most success just using Clip Containing Layer, and basically what you're doing is creating an object that will cut everything away outside of that layer. So we're going to hit Clip Containing Layer, and then it's going to think for a second. And look, everything's gone. Uh-oh. Except we have that white panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to Control X that to cut it out. And see, now you have clipped away everything outside of that panel. So what we're going to do then is we're going to lock that. And see, once you've done a layer clip, it's going to show you in that panel with this C *C. Those indicate that a layer clip is applied to that layer. We're going to lock panel 1. We're going to unlock panel 2 and go to that. I'm going to paste in that layer clip mask. It's essentially a masking tool, and do the same thing. Go to extensions, layer clip, clip containing layer. It's going to think for a second, and sometimes I'll do this with like a colored object just so I know that it's not blanking out the page. So we can use that as a we'll change the color on that just to make it a little more clear what's happening. And again, I will Control X to cut that away. We'll lock panel 2, unlock panel 3, go to that layer, paste back in our masking panel layer. And the very cool thing about this then is that if you had an unusually shaped panel that you wanted to use for some reason, say you wanted to do a round panel, you could totally do that. You can do any shape you want once you define it as your clipping layer or your clipping object. You can do so. So if you had, say, maybe you wanted to do something that looked like an eye or something like that for some strange reason, or a garbage can, or I don't know, whatever. So then in the final panel, then I'll just take that shape and I'll delete it. And now, after applying that to all 4 panels, we have our completed comic. So let's go ahead and go up to our top layer here, our title and panel, and we'll create a title for this as well. We'll call it Vex Philosophy. We'll just call it by Vex. You can just do Control A to select all when you're in a text window. Then we can go and we'll find Creative Block again. So when you select a text block and treat it like an object, it will scale like one. So you can smush it, you can scale it, you can skew it, just like you would any other object. So then when we're done, we will save the strip as file. Save as. We'll call it Vex Philosopher. We'll just save it as an Inkscape SVG. Save. And then I'll show you how to export it as well, just for the sake of completeness. So we have our panels. We lay those out, and again, I could do the whole week. Like if I wanted to do, really impact the whole thing, I could do maybe 7 panels with every day of the week, and then maybe do a close-up on Rex saying the days go by like broken records or something like that. It doesn't have to be, this standard 4-panel strip. You can do whatever you want. It's extremely versatile. Every time you add a panel, you can create that many panels per strip. You could make, you could make them all narrow, make them 7 days in a, 7 tall narrow panels in a row or something, and do it that way. The possibilities are truly endless. You can do basically anything you want. If you can lay it out on a page, you can create a panel out of it, which is very cool. So we want to get this out so we can post it on the web. So this will be part of the I'll put this as part of my the post on VexStrips.com for this blog post. So you go to File, and you want to export a PNG image. That's pretty much your only bitmap option. So I already have this over here on my tab, the Export PNG image. And we want to do Page. So it'll give you a series of tabs: Page, Drawing, Selection. You can actually select just like the art in one panel and export that, but we want to do the whole page. and then it'll ask you export as. So we're going to go to BitClone, VexStrips, tutorial assets. We'll call it Vex Philosopher again. We'll save it. Now we haven't actually saved the document yet. We have to do an export before we do that, and we want to define the image. And since it's going to be for the web, we'll just export it at 800 wide, and then we'll automatically define the height just based on maintaining the perspective. So we've defined a title for it, and then we can export it, and it quickly exports. So when you do an export of a SVG file, you always have to define it, export as, and then just hit export. And then it should be in that folder. I don't know if we'll be able to see it. Oh, yep. So there is PNG file, Vex Philosopher. So we have a file ready to post. So that's how you do it. And like I said, I'll include the instructions for installing the layer clip extension. It's super easy, but just look over on the right of the video on the menu side, and there should be a menu item about Inkscape extensions and how to find them. There's a whole like wiki entry about them, but I will link directly to the layer clip page. There's a really good explanation of how to install it and how it works. There's also a README file as part of the zip that explains how to install it, but it's not hard. And then once you launch Inkscape with that installed, it'll be right there in this extensions menu. And you basically just, again, create a shape, select that shape, and use that when you go extension, layer clip, clip containing layer. So the clip containing that layer will, that shape will then create your panel. And it's that simple. Thanks for watching.